Да, давайте 41 очень актуально для нынешней церковной действительности.
Kai akusantes goideka erksanto aganaktein peri Iakoubu kai Ioannu. Kai proskalisamenos autus go Iisus legi autois. Oidate hoti goi docuntes archein ton ethnon katakyriusin auton kai hoi megalioi auton katexusi adzusin auton. Hutos de estin en юмин. Альгос ан... это я уже 43 читаю. А докуда читаете?
Давайте до конца перекопы.
Угу. Альгос антеле мегас генестай en юмин. Este юмин диаконос. Кайгос антеле en юмин einai protos. Estai panton dulos. Kai gar ho jos tu antropu elten diakonestenai aля diakonesai kai dunai ten psychen autu lutron антиполон.
Да. Когда 10 учеников услышали эти слова, они стали негодовать на Иакова и Иоанна. Иисус подозвал их к себе и сказал: вы знаете, что те, кого считают правителями народов, господствуют над своими подданными, и что начальники распоряжаются своими подчиненными. Но по-гречески у нас здесь просто катриевусин аутон и катексусиадзусин аутон. Вот, но думаю, что мы можем в данном случае для более ровного русского стиля подставить подданными и подчиненными, немало не искажая смысл греческого текста. Но у вас такого быть не должно. Кто из вас хочет быть главным? Мегас. Большим. Я бы считал, что здесь перевод мегас, буквально точно больше, как главный, вполне нормален. Кто из вас хочет быть первым, пусть будет для всех рабом. Ведь и Сын Человеческий пришел не для того, чтобы ему служили, но чтобы служить другим, чтобы ценой собственной жизни выкупить множество жизней. Интересный вопрос здесь у меня возникает в связи с словом «докунтес». Докунтес – это те, кто сами себя считают, что они праведный народ в мире, те, кого считают. Скорее всего, у нас надо понимать в данном случае в пассивной форме, да, как «докейму», «мне кажется». Как, господа, поддерживаете мою экзегезу? The question that I just asked Joel is about the exact meaning of docuntes. Does it refer to those who think themselves to be the rulers, or those who are commonly held to be rulers?
Yeah, I guess I thought it, first of all, I think it's a very important question. Just what the implications are of dokontes, which I think is a word, with a long philosophical background going back to Plato, that what is thought to be true isn't always true. And I guess I see this in an apocalyptic context. Those who are thought to be the rulers, maybe either by themselves or by others, may not really be the rulers, right? That behind these apparent, these people who think that they are ruling or who are thought to be ruling by others, there stand these other powers. And I think that's maybe especially likely because in the background of this whole passage, as verse 45 shows, is Daniel chapter 7, where you have a picture of earthly kingdoms being a reflection of heavenly realities.
Yes, the task of a translator is sometimes easier than that of an exegete or a commentator. Sometimes more difficult, because whatever associations there are here, and of course the idea is that those who are thought or who think themselves to be the rulers are in fact not the rulers, but they're just set by God. They're to some extent puppies in his hands, but still they believe that they are the rulers. Okay. The
But
idea is
yeah,
clear.
that they really rule is being questioned, I think, by this
Yes,
phrase. And my impression is that most of the English translations don't don't convey that sense. I forget how they usually do it, but I think that this nuance is easily lost by at least the English translations that I've looked at.
yes, but my question is on a more plain level. Namely, should we put here passive voice or reflexive voice?
Yeah.
Because in Russian there will be two different constructions. Те, кто считают себя, те, кто думают про себя, что они правят народами, или те, кого считают.
And how would you explain those different constructions for me?
I think that Joker may have actually passive meaning. For example, in the Greek expression "dokei moi," it seems to me it's not the thing which seems, who is really the subject, but that's me, one who perceives. I perceive this to be this and that.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the verb itself, I think, conveys some doubt about, what is being perceived. I think for me, that's the most important thing, that it's that it can, that it questions, it puts a question mark besides archein by the question of who really is ruling.
Yes, for example, in Luke 8:18, Luke 8:18, Blebete un hos aquece, hosngar eche do tesete auto, kai hosan me eche, kai ho do kei eche, artesete ab autu. The subject of decay, the grammatical subject of decay is the guy who is being spoken about, and it's also his perception which is being criticized and questioned here. What he thinks
Mm-hmm.
he has.
Yeah.
Маш, что скажете как филолог-классик? Здесь имеется в виду самовосприятие рулеров или их восприятие другими?
Is it necessarily in Luke 8:18? Is it that he thinks, or what it seems that he has? I mean, I'm just wondering if it's personal or impersonal, the subject of doke.
It's also a good question. I thought that it is personal, but I cannot completely deny the possibility that JK is impersonal.
Yeah, I see that my lexicon gives both transitive meaning of dokeo, to think, to believe, or the intransitive, to seem.
Yes. But that's an
For
important question with regard to the exegesis of this passage as well.
say that again.
It's an important question for the exegesis of this passage.
Yeah.
I do not think, seems to me that you didn't you haven't specifically discussed this issue in your commentary.
Mea culpa.
But it's now at our seminar that you have the possibility to recompense it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I probably just assumed that it was impersonal and intransitive.
That's what I did in my translation, as you see.
Mm-hmm.
But just now, while reading this text, I asked myself whether we can be sure with regard to the voice.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, grammatically, it's active, but the question
Yes,
is
that's okay.
whether in terms of meaning, it has a passive nuance.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Окей. Друзья, по поводу вопроса я сейчас поднял Есть какие-нибудь мысли, идеи?
Можно?
Позволь, Михаил Георгиевич.
Да.
Мне думается, что все-таки здесь речь о тех, кто считают себя таковыми. Вот прежде всего у меня ремарка относительно подданных, если можно. Мне кажется, что таким образом перевод сужает изначальный смысл текста. Подданные – это аналог гражданина. Но речь не о гражданах. Речь именно о тех, кто господствует над народами, возможно, оккупируя их, возможно, незаконно присваивая себе власть над теми народами.
Окей, хорошо. Здесь мы это можем сделать. Над ними это будет референция к народам, которые были только что упомянуты. А что он делает в следующем стихе? Ну, например, мы сделаем вот так. Окей. И что начальники распоряжаются ими, но явно, что здесь начальники считаются как что-то такое, что находится чуть-чуть ниже, чем арханты.
Это не параллелизм здесь, нет?
А параллелизмы уже настолько бывают разные. Бывают параллелизмы восходящие, нисходящие. Я бы как-то воздержался бы от того, чтобы вот аутон в этом стихе однозначно воспринимать как референс к этнон выше.
То есть политической здесь вы не видите намека на политическую ситуацию того времени?
Я вижу намек на политическую ситуацию того времени и нашего тоже. Даже не то чтобы намек, а просто прямое указание на то, что вот эти самые дакунтес архейн тонетнон.
I noticed that Mark uses this verb only one other time in chapter 6, verse 49. And there it
Yes.
definitely is, I think, transitive. You know, they thought that they saw a ghost. He uses it a lot less than the other gospels do.
But here we have not a thing, material thing or person, but a situation. Heute fand das Majestin. So it's a slightly different context. And what do we have in other? What do we have with other gospels? Medoxity, legain.
Yeah, do not think to say in yourselves.
Yes. In this
another
case, yes. In this case, the subject of the dokeo is the same as the subject of the infinitive.
right. Yeah. Another really interesting usage, though, is in Galatians in chapter 2 and chapter 6. Paul refers to toistokusen, those who were thought to be something.
By the way, do you see now our triglot or Bible works?
Yeah. You see,
Мы сейчас что на доске видим?
Bible works.
Works, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, but this is a very specific expression. And of course, in Galatians 2:6, we have a complete parallel, both syntactical and semantical. Hoida kuntas einaiti.
Yeah.
Это those who believe themselves to be something, or those who are believed to be
Right.
something.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, apart from, the strict grammatical point, I think it is interesting that it's used to undermine their belief or people's belief about them. They are thought to be something, but are they really? And
Thank you, Joel. This is very important in the perspective that we met quite often in our discussions, namely the Pauline influence in Mark. Can we? Because here in Mark 10, of course, Mark speaks about apostles during the lifetime of Jesus, but of course, his polemics is not so much against what was there in the good old days when Jesus was still alive, but rather his polemics is with the church hierarchy of his own time. I think that's what is behind this story about Jacob and John, namely one of the most important apostles of Jesus.
yeah, I mean, it is an interesting parallel, and
Yes,
uh,
I think it's maybe not just parallel. Can we think that Galatians 2:6 may be, in fact, the source for this saying in Mark?
well, you always like to take my ideas and push them even further than I push them, so maybe.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is a striking Pauline construction, which is used in a important context in which, Paul's power and the power, as you say, of others in the church is being contrasted, and there's some sort of struggle going on. So
Yes.
I think it's at least an interesting possibility. I'll get back to you on this in 2 or 3 years when I've thought about it.
Okay. And also, you see, not so exact, but still important parallel in Philippians. It is the K, al pepoitene and sarki. Here, probably the subject of decay is the same as pepoitene.
Yeah,
Someone
so.
believes that he may have confidence in the flesh.
Yeah.
I didn't think about this parallelism with this parallel with Paul that we see now, but the more I look at this, the more I like this and believe this is very important. Окей. Маша, у нас, у нас ведь все эти лекции расшифровываются, да? Просто есть какие-то такие находки, которые не хочется терять.
It is interesting that, Paul can use this term, in weighty contexts, both, for the transitive and intransitive nuance of doke. And, I'm just wondering, did a native Greek speaker perceive a difference, or would that just be something they would think that both of these senses were natural and were part of the word, and they wouldn't think about it unless they were a grammarian or something like that.
Yes, I do not think we can have it above. We can translate it in English in such a way as to have it both ways. And I do not think we can do it in Russian.
Yeah, but you can do it obviously in Greek, so there's
Yes, but it's a peculiar feature of Greek lexicon.
yeah, it's multivalent, but maybe native speakers would not perceive that multivalence, I guess.
Okay.
Or the multivalence is only because of the way we think rather than the way they thought.
Yes, human language always have quite a lot of homonyms, both on the level of lexics and on the level of syntax. This may be treated as a kind of a syntactic homonyms. Dacuntus and passive and dacuntus. Okay. Meanwhile, I changed the wording in the light of our discussion. Now it is like this.
Михаил Георгиевич, а может быть здесь антитеза, противопоставление тех, кто считают, что они считают
Тебя правителями.
да, и великими. Противопоставление тех, кто имеет власть, будучи действительно великими, и тех, кто, так сказать, только значится таковыми.
Ну, насчет докунтес архейн. Здесь да, те, кто мнят себя правителем народов, или те, кого мнят правителем народов, они господствуют над ними. А дальше кайхой мегалой, но здесь не говорится кайхой докунтес, скажем, мегалой онт, мегалой эйной, да? Здесь просто говорится гой мегалой. Не те, кто мнят себя большими, а большие. То есть здесь мегалой воспринимается как некий титул. Понятно, что это то величие, которое в глазах Бога ничтожество, но здесь оно как бы под сомнение не ставится, в отличие от архаим.
То есть дакунтес относится исключительно к архен, да?
Да. Невозможно синтаксически дакунтес перетащить во вторую половинку стиха. А вот действительно, кто такие аутон здесь, кайгой мегалой? Аутон это мегалой тон этнон?
Простите, а я, честно говоря, так и не поняла, почему вы перевели как «мнит».
Потому что мы только что обсуждали вот эти гойдакунтес архейн, это как те, кто сами себя мнит, архейн, или те, кого другие мнят, архейн. Про это как раз была у нас дискуссия с Джоэлем.
Нет, это я поняла. Мне просто кажется, что... просто мне кажется, русское слово «мнит», оно какой-то имеет такие отрицательные коннотации, что на самом деле они не правители.
Мне кажется, что это совершенно точно передает смысл
Ай, здесь.
греческого здесь текста. Что для меня не ясно, это как перевести. Вы знаете, что те, кто мнит себя правителями народов, или знаете, что те, кого мнят правителями народов. Но вот этот оттенок, о котором вы говорите, что на самом-то деле вообще они не правители, один только есть правитель Бог. Мне кажется, он здесь очень ясно чувствуется, разве нет?
Ну, я пока этого не поняла. Ну ладно, может быть, давайте прочитаем дальше. Я что-то пока этого не вижу.
То есть вы хотите сказать, что речь идет по существу о демократии и диктатуре? О выборе между демократией, когда народы выбирают кого-то, кого они мнят великими? Или о диктатуре, когда кто-то начинает эту власть себе присваивать?
Но во времена Иисуса демократия в античном мире была воспоминанием прошлого, в общем и в целом. Вот поэтому нет, я не думаю, что здесь есть какое-то противопоставление. Меня здесь чисто как переводчика грамматические вещи волнуют. Кто мнит себя или те, кого мнят. Хотя понятно, что это по большому счету не так важно, что же переводчик должен поставить. И таких двусмысленных конструкций, как греческая гойда кунта, здесь по-русски нет.
This may not be what you're discussing, and this just may be something to do with Russian grammar, but your kato mnit is singular, right? Whoever thinks himself to be something or to rule.
In
Whereas
Russian, yes, in Russian, relative clauses which start with кто
yeah,
quite often from the point of stylistics are put in singular, even if the reference is to a plurality of people. But in fact, we can write, значит, те, кто мнят себя правителями народов, both ways are completely equivalent in Russian, and both ways are possible.
yeah, but you're losing the sense that it's more than one person who is thinking
No.
of them in this
No.
way. No.
No, because we have plural in правителями.
Okay. All right. I see. Okay.
This is really a peculiar feature of Russian language, which concerns only the subject of the relative clause. But after this, other references
Yeah.
are still being plural. It's completely the same.
It's idiomatic Russian.
Idiomatic Russian, yes. Another question is whether these ahoi ethnoi is an indication to non-Jews
Yeah. Or whether it includes Jews, whether Jews could be amongst the nations.
Yes.
I mean, a very similar question arises at the end of Matthew. You know, go therefore and make disciples of panton ton ethnon. And there's a big exegetical debate about whether that means go to the Gentiles or go to all nations, which it would include Jews amongst the nations. Yeah, I don't know in this case. I mean, is it talking about pagan rulers, in other words, or is it talking about all rulers of any nation, all apparent rulers of any nation?
I think that all rulers of an nation, and in the light of the Pauline parallel that we had, I would even think that this also includes not only rulers of other nations and even not rulers of the Jews, but even the rulers of the Christians, the Christian authorities.
Yeah, well, that's certainly the precipitating question, is authority within the church, right? And greatness within the church. What is true? What is greatness within the church?
Yes. Okay. A question for everyone, whether English speaker or Russian speaker. How megalo our tone? Should we, in our translation, render this outtone as synonymous to ton at non, above, и великие этих народов, и начальники этих народов, и первые люди этих народов распоряжаются ими? Что скажете, друзья?
Я бы распространила действие «кто мнит» на мигалой тоже.
А как это возможно грамматически?
Сделала бы более, так, эллиптически. Явно здесь должно быть в одном значении «гойда кунтас архин» и «гой мегалой».
Ну да. Но просто как бы, почему Гойда Кунтес Архен, не просто Архунтес? Потому что по большому счету, как бы в другом месте сказано, один у вас начальник Бог. Вот. А насчет Мегас, ну, ладно, окей. Называйте себя Мегас. Если называешь себя Архон, то знай, что тебе не положено называться Архон. Ты знаешь себя Мегас, ну ладно, хорошо. Называй себя Мегас просто в другом смысле, не как Бог. Но я не представляю себе, как чисто грамматически мы можем считать Гой Мегалой эллипсисом от Гой Докунтес Мегалой Эйной.
Не грамматически, конечно, да.
Но вы скорее согласны, что аутон здесь это, наверное, народы, да?
Но было бы прекрасно, если бы у нас это мегалой как-то перекликалось с микрой.
Да. И это очень хорошо. И как мы это сделаем?
Великие.
Ну-ка.
Guess it seems to me, thinking about this some more, that probably it is non-Jewish rulers who are in view, pagan rulers, and amongst them, their great ones oppress their subjects.
Да, может быть. Maybe. Another question, quite important, that Masha raised is whether there is, in fact, an opposition between these hoi megaloi and hoi mikroi, which we talked about just a page earlier. The Christians, they really are hoi mikroi.
Yeah. I mean, I think these passages are doublets of each other, right? That the end of chapter 9 and this section of chapter 10 have similar discussions of power.
Yes.
And little ones and great ones, how to be great.
Yes.
And
In fact, we have cheese maids on here once again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he's making a similar answer, that in order to become maid zone, you have to make yourself little, contrary to what most people would think. Most people think the way to make yourself great is to make yourself great.
Yes. There was also a suggestion somehow to render in Russian this opposition between hoi megaloi and hoi mikroi.
You notice at the end of chapter 9, there was also diakonos, right?
Yes.
Which is going, and the verbal form of that is going to appear at the end of our passage. So there's lots of semantic, in verse 35 there. Yeah. So the suggestion was what you were saying before?
Maybe we can render this opposition between hoi megalo and hoi mikroi in Greek with the same use of antonyms in Russian. But I do not see any possibility. Малые, большие, и что их большие распоряжаются ими, что их на большие распоряжаются ими. Мне кажется, есть начальники на месте. Кто хочет начальников заменить на кого-нибудь?
Где на кого?
Ну да, пожалуй, действительно, вы, наверное, правы, что по-русски так не получится.
Окей.
It's interesting that this passage doesn't say that there's anything wrong with wanting to be great, though. Right? I mean, I've heard this explained, in a sort of scolding way. Well, don't try to be great the way James and John did. But it seems to me that the passage is not questioning, is not implying that it's bad to want to be great. It's just saying that, look, if you want to be great, here's the way to do it. Namely, make yourself little.
Yes, exactly.
But you often hear this interpreted in what I would say is a moralistic sense, as if you were scolding the one who is trying to exalt themselves. But I'm not sure there's anything wrong with wanting to exalt yourself. But if you want to do that, then the way to do it is to debase yourself.
Yes, it is the paradoxical ethics of the New Testament.
Mm-hmm. And I guess the other thing I think is very important here is it seems to me that verse 45 is, that's a direct allusion to Daniel 7,
Mm-hmm.
and yet it's inverting it in a way. Because definitely in Daniel 7, the one like a son of man is served using that same verb, I think, in at least one of the Greek versions,
Mm-hmm.
is served, by thousands upon millions. But this is saying that the Son of Man did not come to be served. But to serve and to, give up his life. And it
Yes,
seems to me that the latter part is alluding to a different scriptural source, if there is one, the Isaiah 53 or something like that. But that the first part, it does seem to me to deliberately echo Daniel 7 and yet to twist it.
Daniel 7, which verse?
Well, there's a verse like in the middle, 7:14 or so, and then verse at the end, like 7:28. And I think the Theodotion is different from the Old Greek, or whatever you want to call it.
7:14.
I think so. Daniel 7.
Dota auto exousia, kai
Yeah.
panto etnetas ges. Auto.
Yeah, and to latreu usa, and in Theodotion it's duleu susin.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it's not docuntes, but let's see, in 728.
According to my concordance, diaconeo does not occur altogether in the Septuagint.
Okay.
Only dulevo.
Not at all? Okay. Yeah, I guess I was thinking of duleu in which appears in Theodotion. Hold on a second. Yeah, okay, I guess I was wrong about that. So yeah, in 727 again, the Theodotion has Duleu susin. I guess that's what I was thinking of.
Мгм.
Well, similar idea.
Yes, different words, but the similar idea. Exactly.
But I'm really interested in these. I think this isn't the only time that you have this in the gospel tradition or in the New Testament. Reuse of tradition that seems definitely to be invoking a previous tradition, but then deliberately altering it and altering it in a way that, those who knew the previous passage would perceive. A deliberate revision, self-conscious and blatant.
As some people would say, uh, even not alter, but deconstruct.
Yeah. I mean, yes, you could say that it's deconstructing that, but the what is and maybe this is behind the deconstruction idea in Derrida and people like that. The original thing that you're deconstructing, it's still there. It's
Yes,
not like
exactly.
destroying the previous tradition. It's putting it, it's giving it a twist, I guess is the way I would put it.
I would say it's giving it a twist and finding a paradoxical contradiction within the thing itself,
Mm.
so to speak, not to throw it away, but rather to find some inherent contradiction.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I understood Derrida when I
Yeah.
was with him.
Uh, yeah, and you wonder if, this, like in this Mark 10:45, if that has an implication for the meaning of Son of Man. In other words, it's recalling the, similar construction in Daniel 7, though there it's
Mhm.
one like a Son of Man. But he is, he's a figure of glory. Uh, and, so that idea is there. It is invoked by Mark 10:45, but is it saying that, well, one thing it seems to be doing is, melding the Daniel 7 idea with Isaiah 53, or, some sort of, idea like that. And that uh, kind of changes your conception of what Son of Man means.
Yes, the same reinterpretation as we have with regard to the term of Mashiach.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Okay. Look, Elton, diakonetenei, la diakonesei, kaidunai ten psychen. Once again, we have psyche clearly in the sense of life
Mm-hmm.
and not in the sense of soul. Lutron antipollon. Выкупить. Нормально, друзья? Нет возражений против моего русского перевода?
Нормально.
Окей. Ну что же. Есть у нас еще замечания к стихам 41-45? Do we have some more remarks, footnotes to verses 41 to 45?
No, I just, I would admit that the connection with Isaiah 53 it's weaker in terms of vocabulary than the connection with Daniel 7. But what you do have is, a similar idea to what you get in Isaiah 53. And then I think the only specific vocabulary linkage is polon. That the righteous servant in Isaiah 53 gives his life for many. Rabim. So, some people question whether there actually is an allusion to Isaiah 53 here. And I think there's also a lot of discussion of the exact meaning of lutron, because, this gets involved with various theories about atonement that I forget the details of. And ransom versus, I don't know, something else. Propitiation.
Yes, I think that the metaphor is quite clear. And on the level of translation, I think it's also quite clear. The questions arise at another level, namely, who was to be given this lutros
Mm.
and so on, but
Yeah.
they do not have necessarily implications for the translation.
So when you say the translation is clear, what do you mean?
That Greek text does not specify who gets this ransom.
Right.
And there is no necessity in our languages either to specify this. This means that though it's a great question for exegetes and preachers, it's not a question for the translator, because in this case, happily for the translator can keep the ambiguity of the Greek text.
Okay, but so what's clear
does not specify who gets this.
Yeah. But so what's clear is that we're talking about a ransom, like when somebody kidnaps somebody and then says, I'll give you back your whatever daughter.
Yes.
If you give me a certain amount of money.
Yes.
Yeah. It's interesting. I don't think that's a biblical metaphor, is it? I mean, I don't recall it being used that way in the Old Testament, for example.
Lutron. Let's look.
It's probably a good way of investigating.
For example, here in Exodus. Yeah, and Labas Τον συλλογισμό των γιών Ισραήλ,
Yeah. Okay.
καηδός συνεργαστός λούτρα της ψυχές αυτού.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
That people are to give lutron
Hmm.
for their lives.
Yeah.
To Kyrio.
So it is being used in a symbolic and religious sense.
I think in religious sense, the verb is used, lutroa, Hebrew ga'al, and it's used with the God as subject, God who is ransoming his people initially from Egypt.
Mhm.
And I think this metaphor as God who about God who who buys his people back
Yeah.
from Egypt. It is this metaphor is transferred to further to other contexts, to exile as well, and just further on just a personal relationship between God and a person, like in Psalms.
Right. I mean, do we have it in the Old Testament in a secular sense then, outside of these religious contexts?
I think it's about buying from slavery.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, should be in non-religious sense as well.
Yeah.
Maybe
I noticed that, yeah, the previous passage was kofar, right, rather than Gaal, though most of these seem to be related to the Gaal root.
Yeah, I would say more Gaal, not Kippur, because Kippur is something different.
Yeah, but it was in one of the passages that Michael was going over, one
Was
of the previous ones.
I'm not sure.
I saw it pop up on the Hebrew there. So the basic, at least the etymological meaning of Gaal really has to do with manumission from slavery, buying out of slavery.
Yeah, I think so. It should be like that.
Which I'm not sure that's true in Greek for lutron, that I'm not sure that's the first thing that you would think of. Though I do see, in my Muraoka dictionary that the first meaning of lutroomai is to procure release from bondage. So maybe I'm wrong about that.
Yes, the standard Hebrew equivalent for lutro is Gaal,
Mhm.
and there is not a single occurrence of Kippur.
Okay.
And if you look for a noun, lutron,
Well, maybe it was some other word that was, in the verse that was translated from Kofer. But I know I saw it.
I saw it only in back translation of Mark into modern Hebrew, or into Hebrew, or oh no, it was keeper. Yeah.
I knew I saw it. Yeah,
but,
it's interesting.
but as concerns the noun lutron, the picture is different.
Yeah. And I guess the other verb that was almost as common was pada, which is that usually associated with like freedoms from slavery also? I mean, it means to liberate.
Well, but let's look at the equivalents lutron and kofer. It's in Exodus. See, here you have both words. Im kofer you shall love. Venatan pidion nasho in Greek. And the lutra, if you bleche auto, dose lutra, des psuches auto. So lutra translates here both kofer and pidion.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, I guess that means that the translator couldn't think of another word to use in the parallelism.
Yes, and also Geula is several times translated as lutron. So your connection of lutron with kofer was right, though not the connection of lutro with kiper.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I didn't think I was making a big deal out of it. I just saw it there on the screen as you
Yes.
went past. But yeah, it's interesting. It's really interesting that the passage where lutron is used twice. I mean, you would think, Greek had a lot of words. You would think that the translator could have found another word to preserve the parallelism, to make it a synthetic parallelism, not just
Yes,
repeat the
but
same word.
the Septuagint translators didn't work that way. They often tried to be consistent in rendering the same Hebrew word with same Greek words, but they didn't strive to render the difference between two Hebrew synonyms with different Greek synonyms. This was more common, I think, in Aquila. When for example, obviously in Greek language, poiein and ktidzein, in the peculiar sense, ktidzein has in the Bible are more or less the same but Aquila always translates Hebrew bara as ktidzein and Hebrew asa as poyein, while the Septuagint itself does not make any particular attention to the interchanging of these words.
Yeah, it reminds me of debates about at the end of the Gospel of John, Jesus says,
Oh,
Peter, do you love me? And he uses agapao several times, I think, and then he uses phileo, and people make a big deal about, he's changing the word here, and he's saying, do you, I'm not even asking me if you love me with, this great self-giving agape love. Do you even love me with brotherly love? But I think it's probably just stylistic variation, and it doesn't really mean anything.
I also think this is quite far-fetched. But John is a very peculiar text and strange. It's a visionary text when you could not explain everything in this text, because probably the author himself couldn't explain everything he wrote.
Yeah.
Okay, but
Well,
let's go back to our Mark.
I think that's even more true in the epistles of John. And I remember, my teacher Raymond Brown, he first did commentary on the Gospel of John, and then later in his career he did the epistles of John. And I think he got very frustrated with the epistles of John because the language was so vague sometimes. He couldn't figure out what he was trying to say.
Yes. Let's go back to our text. Я вижу в чате предложение. Мне кажется, что мегалой в стихе 42 и мега в стихе 43 очевидно перекликаются. Может быть, можно переводить сохранить связь в этих стихах, используя однокоренные слова. Это ровно то, только на другом материале, про что мы сейчас говорили, когда говорили про сохранение у Аквилы, разницы между еврейским бара и оса, вот, или про экзегезу разных употреблений глаголов филейн и агапан в конце Евангелия от Иоанна. В принципе, наверное, если можно такое сохранить, это хорошо. А есть ли в русском языке такая возможность? The question is whether we can somehow render in Russian megas in verse 43 and megaloi in verse 42 in such way as to show that these are different forms of the same adjective. Okay. Русскоговорящие коллеги, есть ли возможность выполнить такой реквест? Кто хочет быть начальником, пусть будет слугой. Нет, не пойдет. Что скажете, друзья?
Does начальники, is that related to начать, to start?
Yes, in fact, I think this is the word that came through Church Slavonic from Greek, not phonetically, but as concerns the inner structure of the word. It's the Church Slavonic translation of the Greek archon.
Huh,
So
Okay. All right.
начало из архе, начинать из архейн, начальствовать the same, and начальник is архон.
Okay.
Можно я спрошу другой вопрос про русский язык?
Окей.
Мне просто кажется, что вот эти вот формы «эстой», да, которые у нас здесь в 43-44 стихах, которые будущее время, мне кажется, это такое очень сильное приказание. Может быть, нам стоит по образцу многих английских переводов, которые используют must, здесь тоже использовать должен быть слугой, например, а не просто пусть будет.
Вы считаете, что пусть будет, это недостаточно?
Ну вот не знаю, это скорее вопрос такой стилистический.
Мне нравится Машина предложение.
Должен?
Мгм. Да, это заостряет выбор и, по-моему, текстуально оправданно.
Мне просто кажется, на самом деле, что пусть будет
Сильнее.
в чем-то сильнее, потому что это прямое приказание. А должен быть это такая модальная штука. Но мало кто чего должен. Можно сказать, например, что такие-то люди должны себя вести хорошо. То есть мне кажется, что пусть будет даже сильнее, чем должен. Нет?
Ну хорошо, нет, если вы так сознательно сделали, тогда я не буду спорить. Вот хотела этот момент отметить, что здесь должно быть такое именно очень сильное приказание.
Мне кажется, пусть будет такое сильное приказание.
Да. Ну, да, от начальников, наверное, не знаю, как тут избавиться.
Вот было предложение вместо начальника поставить главенствующие.
Так,
Но мне
просто главные, почему плохо?
Что?
А,
Главные?
да.
Окей. А синтаксис тогда какой? И что главные у них распоряжаются ими?
Ну да.
Как раз в
Да.
этом смысл, чтобы это перекликалось с 43-м стихом.
Не
Я
знаю,
понял.
мне кажется, что здесь это не обязательно. Здесь нет такой необходимости в том, чтобы это было единообразно. Здесь и так это перекликается, и так это понятно. А,
Я думаю, что можно поставить такой вопрос. Не знаю.
I mean, you couldn't use bolshia in this context, could you? What would that mean? Just they're tall people or something?
That's just something that we do not say.
Большевики.
И что большевики распоряжаются ими.
Нет, мне кажется, что это не так важно.
Окей.
А есть ли у нас где-то еще отдавание жизни за кого-то, кроме вот этого стиха из Исаии 53, 53 главы?
У Павла есть где-то, что разве за благодетеля кто-то захочет умереть, но вообще это ненормально для человека отдавать свою жизнь за другого. Вот. Но это как раз уже как бы на евангельских
Это понятно, да. Я просто очень удивилась этой идее, что здесь не очевидна отсылка к Исаии. I'm asking just if there are any other passages where this idea of giving giving your life for in ransom of others appears.
John 15:13.
Yeah, because the question is if there are no other such passages, why the allusion to Isaiah is questioned.
Yeah, I think people do bring in some other passages, and I can't remember what they are. Um,
For example,
There's-
this passage from Numbers.
yeah, Silliers Breitenbach did a whole dissertation or habilitation on this question. Let's see.
Do you see Numbers 3:12 on the screen?
Yeah.
It's an interesting place.
It's interesting. I mean, what is it? It doesn't really correspond to anything in the Hebrew, does it?
Yes, exactly.
Peter Rechem? But isn't Peter Rechem just like opening the womb or something?
Yes, but that's the Prototokos. Bechor, Peter Rechem. We have in Hebrew Bechor, and then this Bechor is followed by Patrech, which means the same thing, and we have
Right.
the name verb prototokos, which was probably understandable for normal Greek speaking, and then dianoigon tos metron, which was probably ununderstandable for normal Greek.
Yeah.
So, Mibne Israel parton yon Israel, Vhayu emoi goili vitai, okay? But Lucha auton esontai does not correspond to anything in the Greek text,
Right.
at least in the Hebrew text, at least in the received Hebrew text.
Right. I mean, you could say maybe it's implied by tachat instead of or in the place of.
It's a very interesting passage, really, because this is the development of the idea that a person may be a lutron for another person that we do not have in other passages. Numbers 18. Kai pantenoigon mechan, apopases sarkos, aprosferusin kyrio, apon tropu, eos ktenos, so estei. Kol patrachem l'chol basar asher yakrivu la Adonai, ba'adam ubabhema, apon tropu, eos ktenos, yirjelach, ach padotiv de, al lutrois lutrotesotei. Это Бехор Гадам. Лютрес лютрестой. Та прототока. Тенантропом. Это прототока тенон. Тона катартон лютроси. Yes, that's another passage. We also have the idea of lutron as
Yeah.
something that should be.
So do you think there was human sacrifice practiced in ancient Israel way back? And this rite is reflects that the firstborn. I mean, some people see like Genesis 22 as a repudiation of a practice that was previously there of sacrificing the firstborn.
I do not think that, especially with the high level of mortality among children. Алеша, ничего, перезвоню чуть попозже, у меня просто сейчас еще семинар. Алло? Понятно. Понятно. А когда кончится? Хорошо. Давай-то, может быть, где-то каток. Хорошо. Я сейчас посмотрю. Спасибо. Хорошо. Спасибо. Хорошо. Ладно, пока. I don't think that any people could exist if they sacrificed all the firstborns. But I think that the motive of firstborn was there, and it was used somehow to explain, to give an etymological legend for the origin of the fact that the Levites belong to the Lord.
Okay. Yeah. I guess what John Levinson would say is, I mean, why do you have this language? Why does the firstborn need to be ransomed? Right? I guess that's his question. Where does this language of ransoming the firstborn come from? Doesn't that presuppose that the firstborn should be sacrificed and you're somehow saving the firstborn from that?
I think this may be a bit more complicated. I think there was a habit of sacrificing firstborn when at some occasions, like we have in the story of King Mash's son, or in some stories of the Carthaginian sacrifices. But then in the biblical tradition, it was both generalized that all firstborn children are to be sacrificed to the Lord, and at the same time it's generalized, and at the same time it is used as a legitimation for the special status of the Levites. So that in reality, I think there was not a single stage in the history of the Jewish people when all firstborn children, firstborn males, were to be sacrificed. But it's rather a construction.
Mhm. And so then this doesn't have anything to do with Genesis 22.
This has a lot of things to do with Genesis 22, but Genesis 22 also does not presuppose that all firstborn males
Mhm.
should be
Yeah.
sacrificed. Yes,
Okay.
I think Levinson's book is a very nice book. I like it a lot, and
Yeah.
a lot of topics and motives in Christianity becomes
Mhm.
much more clear
Yeah.
with his
Yeah,
book.
no, it's very interesting. And anyway, it's yeah, it's not directly our topic today, but since we're
Yes.
looking at all the passages that speak about ransoming the firstborn, just wondered what you thought of that.
Yes. Yes. Okay. We looked at a very important passage, not only important for the Gospel of Mark or for the early church, but also for our time as well. I think we have discussed quite a lot of important issues related to this text. And let's meet next Thursday.
Jawohl. Good. Cheerio.
Thank
See
you.
you next week. Do
See you next
skoro.
week.